nursing home when news arrived that changed everything. My wealthy brother had left me a sprawling ranch in Yellowstone, along with a hidden fortune. The very moment I heard, my strange daughter appeared, demanding I sign it all over. "Transfer it to us," she insisted. "We'll take care of you, you ungrateful old woman." But then my attorney walked into the room, and everything shifted. Stay with me until the end, and drop the name of your city in the comments, so I know how far this story travels. The scrape of Mrs. Henderson's walker across the linoleum was the only sound in Sunset Manor's quiet common room. I sat in my usual seat by the window, staring at the same dull parking lot I'd been watching for 3 years. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Though, not that I was counting. My name is Bernice Walsh, and at 67, this nursing home had become my entire world. Not by choice. My daughter, Astrid, decided it for me on a cold Tuesday morning back in March 2021. "Mom, we just can't handle this anymore," she said with that polished tone of false concern. "You're getting forgetful, and with Marcus's schedule and the kids," she let the rest hang like a threat. Forgetful. That's what she called it when I questioned why $20,000 had disappeared from my savings. The same week, Marcus needed a down payment for his shiny new truck. When I raised the issue, suddenly I was the confused one. But I wasn't confused. I knew exactly what was happening. I just couldn't prove it. The nurses here were kind enough, but they treated us all like children. "Time for your pills, Bernice," they'd chirp, as if I hadn't managed my own medication for decades. Through the window, I watched a family help an elderly man into their car. His daughter held his arm, laughing at something he'd said. The sight tightened my chest. When was the last time Astrid had laughed with me instead of at me? The memory of our last real conversation still hurt. Tommy's 8th birthday. I'd saved for months to buy him the bicycle he dreamed of. Astrid had pulled me aside, annoyed. "Mom, you can't keep spoiling him. It makes Marcus and me look bad when we can't afford gifts like that." Her words cut deep, especially since she'd spent twice as much on new patio furniture that same week. Now I paid $4,000 a month to stay here, money from my Social Security and a small pension from 30 years as a school secretary. Money that could have gone to Tommy's college fund or Sarah's dance lessons. Instead, it kept me out of their way. "Bernice." A voice broke through my thoughts. Janet, one of the day nurses, stood beside me with a gentle smile. "Someone's here to see you. A lawyer." My heart skipped. In 3 years, I'd had only the occasional church visitor and one brief Christmas visit from Astrid, who stayed 45 minutes and spent most of it on her phone. "A lawyer?" I whispered. "He's waiting in the family conference room," Janet said. "Would you like me to walk with you?" I rose slowly, hands trembling. My will was simple, everything to Astrid and the grandkids. Not that there was much left. The hallway stretched endlessly, the faint sounds of a TV and someone's cough echoing off pale yellow walls and fake flowers. Sunset Manor tried for cheer, but it still felt like what it was. A place where people waited. The conference room was small and sterile, a round table in the center. A man in his 50s, sharply dressed, stood as I entered. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm Jonathan Mills, attorney for the estate of George Walsh." His expression softened. "I'm very sorry for your loss. My older brother..." The room swayed as I gripped the chair for balance. "When did he..." "3 days ago," he said gently. "A sudden heart attack." I sank into the chair, my mind spinning. George was gone at 72. We hadn't spoken in nearly 5 years. Not since a ridiculous argument over Dad's old watch. Pride kept us apart. And now there would never be a chance to make it right. "I know this is a shock," Mr. Mills said gently, settling into the chair across from me. "Your brother left very specific instructions about contacting you." He insisted I handle this myself. He opened a leather briefcase and spread several documents across the table. "Mrs. Walsh, your brother left you something significant in his will." I stared at the papers, the words swimming before my eyes. "I don't understand." "We weren't close anymore?" "Perhaps not recently," he replied, "but he spoke of you often. He was worried about how you've been living." Heat crept up my cheeks. Even George had known about my situation, tucked away in a nursing home, left behind by my own daughter. The sting of that truth landed like a slap. "What did he leave me?" I managed. Before he could answer, the conference room door swung open. Astrid swept in, perfectly styled blonde hair untouched by the rush. Behind her came Marcus, wearing that stern, unreadable look I'd come to resent. "Mom," she exclaimed, voice full of polished concern. "I came as soon as I heard about Uncle George." "Are you okay? Why didn't anyone call me first?" I looked at her. Really looked. The designer handbag, the expensive clothes, the flawless nails. All this while insisting she couldn't help with my care. The realization I'd avoided for years finally settled, cold and certain. She wasn't here to comfort me. She was here because she'd heard about the lawyer. Mr. Mills cleared his throat. "I'm afraid this meeting was scheduled specifically with Mrs. Walsh." "Oh, that's fine," Astrid cut in smoothly, sliding into the seat beside me without invitation. "I help manage all of Mom's affairs now." She patted my hand in that practiced, patronizing way that always made my skin crawl. "Don't you, Mom?" Marcus stayed by the door, arms crossed, eyes flicking to the documents like a guard watching treasure. "Actually," I said, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice, "I'd like to hear what Mr. Mills has to say." Astrid's smile tightened. "Of course, Mom. I'm only here to help. You know how confusing legal matters can be." That familiar phrase, her favorite excuse for taking over my life, struck a spark inside me. Mr. Mills met my eyes and continued, ignoring her interruption. "Your brother George owned a ranch in Yellowstone County, Montana. 2,000 acres of pristine land that's been in your family for over 60 years. I blinked. George had a ranch? But he worked at the grain elevator. "That was just his day job," Mr. Mills explained. "He inherited the property from your Uncle Robert and quietly ran cattle there for decades." He slid a photograph across the table. A grand log house framed by rolling green hills and a bright red barn, mountains rising like a painting in the distance. It looked nothing like the modest apartment where George had lived. "Why didn't he ever tell me?" I whispered, tracing the picture's edge. "Your brother valued privacy," Mr. Mills said. "He preferred a simple life, even though he was far from ordinary." He hesitated, glancing at Astrid, who was leaning forward, eyes shining with barely hidden excitement. "Perhaps we should discuss the financial details privately." "No need," Astrid said quickly. "As I mentioned, I handle everything for Mom." "Right, Mom?" Her manicured nails dug into my hand as she squeezed. I pulled away. "What details?" I asked firmly. Mr. Mills opened another folder and slid a single sheet toward me. A bank statement. I read the numbers 3 times before they registered. $8,400,000. "Your brother invested carefully," Mr. Mills explained. "Gold when prices were low, treasury bonds, shares in established companies. He lived frugally and let his wealth grow." The room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in the hush. $8 million. George, the brother I thought scraped by on a small pension, had quietly built a fortune. From the doorway, Marcus finally breathed the stunned word. "Unbelievable." Astrid shot the lawyer a sharp glance before turning back to me, her eyes suddenly wide and bright. "Mom, this is incredible. Uncle George must have truly cared for you to leave you all of this." But I barely heard her. I was still trying to process Mr. Mills's words. George had left me everything, the ranch, the investments, even the mineral rights beneath the land. "Yes," Mr. Mills confirmed, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. "And there's this. He wanted you to read it yourself." My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The familiar handwriting stopped me cold. "Bernice, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I should have swallowed my pride and called you. You were always more of a parent to me than either of ours ever managed to be, taking care of me when I was sick, getting me to school when Dad was on one of his benders. I know what Astrid did, and I know why. I should have stepped in, but I thought you wouldn't want my help after our fight. This ranch was always meant for both of us, but I held on to it out of anger. I'm sorry. You deserve better than the hand you were dealt. Use this gift to live your life, not the one anyone else chooses for you." Or George. Tears blurred the page. George had known everything, and still, he'd chosen to protect me. "What does it say, Mom?" Astrid's voice sounded distant. I folded the letter carefully. "It's private. Mom, we need to talk about this logically," she pressed, her tone slipping into that practiced patience she used when she thought I was being difficult. "This is a huge responsibility, managing a ranch, investments. You can't possibly handle all that yourself." I haven't said I would, I replied. Exactly. Her eyes lit with quick relief. That's why Marcus and I are here. We can help. Maybe sell the ranch. Put the money in a trust where it's safe. Marcus stepped forward, eager. I've got real estate experience. I can drive up there this weekend and check the property's market value. I looked at them both. Really looked. Astrid in her designer clothes, Marcus with his hungry eyes fixed on the documents. 3 years of silence, and now they were suddenly concerned. That's very thoughtful, I said evenly. But I need time to take this in. Of course, Astrid said quickly. But decisions like this can't wait. Taxes, legal requirements. Mr. Mills finally spoke. Actually, Mrs. Walsh, there's no rush. Your brother arranged everything to minimize taxes, and I'll handle the legal side. You can decide in your own time. Astrid's smile wavered. Well, yes, but family should be involved. Where has family been for the past 3 years? The words escaped before I could stop them. The room went still. Mom, that's not fair. You know we visit. You visited 4 times in 3 years, I said, voice steady. 3 of those were holidays out of obligation. The last was 8 months ago, and you spent it complaining about the drive. Mom, we've been busy with the kids, with work. Too busy to call. Too busy to see if I was okay. Too busy for a meal together. Yet somehow you arrived 20 minutes after hearing a lawyer was involved. Marcus shifted uneasy. Look, Bernice, I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said quietly. Just clarity. Astrid reached for my arm. Mom, please. We love you. I looked at her hand, remembering the little girl who once climbed into my lap after nightmares. But that child was gone, replaced by a woman who saw me as something to manage. Mr. Mills, I said, turning to the lawyer. Let's schedule another meeting. Just the 2 of us. Of course, he said. Tomorrow morning. That will be perfect. Astrid stood abruptly, her careful composure finally beginning to crack. Mom, you can't just shut us out of this. We're your family. I paused at the door and turned back. Family doesn't abandon someone in a nursing home and vanish for years. Astrid's face tightened, but I walked out without another word. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't stop to comfort her or smooth things over. I simply kept walking. That night, sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw George's handwriting, heard his steady voice in my mind. You deserve better than what you got, Bernice. $8 million? The number spun through my head like a reel hitting the jackpot. I could leave this place. I could start again. But doubt crept in. Who was I kidding? I was 67, living in a care home because my own daughter said I couldn't look after myself. What did I know about running a ranch or managing millions? Morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was halfway through breakfast when Janet, the nurse, approached. Bernice, your daughter is here. And she brought the grandchildren. My spoon froze midair. Astrid never brought Tommy and Sarah here. In 3 years, they'd visited exactly twice. And both times she'd rushed them out, claiming the place wasn't good for kids. I'll be right there, I said, heart pounding. In the lobby, 11-year-old Tommy sat stiffly, phone in hand. 8-year-old Sarah fidgeted beside him, her blonde pigtails bouncing as she looked around. Astrid stood near the desk, immaculate as always. A tight smile stretched across her face. Mom, she called brightly. Look who wanted to visit Grandma. Hi, Grandma, Tommy said, barely looking up. Sarah ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Grandma Bernice, Mommy said we can take you out for lunch. My heart softened, even as I wondered what promise had brought them here. The cafe Astrid chose was nearly empty, quiet enough that every word carried. She slid into a corner booth where she could watch the room. Tommy and Sarah shared a plate of cookies they hardly touched. I hope you're not upset about yesterday, Astrid began, stirring sugar into her coffee. I know we seem pushy, but we're just worried about you. I sipped my tea and waited. Silence always drew out more. This inheritance, it's wonderful, she continued. Uncle George was so generous, but Mom, you have to admit this is overwhelming. Managing a ranch, handling that kind of money, it's a lot for anyone. She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. It's more than most people could manage. You think I can't handle it? I asked. You're amazing, Mom. But you're also in assisted care for a reason. The doctor said, What doctors? I cut in. I've only had routine checkups. Her smile faltered. Well, Dr. Morrison mentioned some memory issues. Dr. Morrison said mild arthritis and slightly high blood pressure, I replied. Nothing about memory. The air tightened. Sarah glanced up, sensing the tension. Are you okay, Grandma? I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. Astrid recovered quickly. The point is, we just want to help. Marcus has been researching investment firms. We could put everything into a managed portfolio so you don't have to worry. We'd monitor it to keep everything safe. We could even arrange a monthly allowance for Sunset Manor so you'll never think about payments. And there it was. They wanted control of the money and of me. What if I don't want to stay at Sunset Manor? I asked quietly. For a heartbeat, her polished mask slipped. Mom, be realistic. You can't live alone anymore. Remember what happened before? You were forgetting to pay bills, leaving the stove on. I left the stove on once, I said sharply. Once. While I was on the phone with Marcus, when he asked me to lend you money for Sarah's dental work. And I never forgot to pay bills. I simply questioned why my account was $20,000 short. Tommy looked up from his phone, eyes wide. What's wrong with Grandma's bank? Nothing's wrong, honey, Astrid said quickly, her voice just a little too bright. Grandma just gets confused about her finances sometimes, Astrid said softly. I'm not confused, I answered, my voice steady. And I am not incompetent. Of course you're not, she replied, that patronizing edge slipping back into her tone. But Mom, this is $8 million we're talking about. What if someone tries to take advantage of you? What if you make a mistake that costs everything? Like trusting my own daughter? The words landed like a slap. Sarah's eyes went wide. Tommy finally looked up from his phone. Even the couple at the next table stopped mid-conversation. Astrid's face drained of color and then flushed red. I can't believe you just said that. Can't you? I kept my voice calm, though my heart pounded. In 3 years, you visited me 4 times. You've called maybe a dozen, and half of those calls were about insurance bills you wanted me to handle. You put me in Sunset Manor against my wishes and disappeared. And now, less than a day after learning about an inheritance, you show up with the grandchildren, talking about what's best for me. We're here because we love you, she said. No, I replied quietly. You're here because you smell money. Sarah's lower lip trembled and tears welled. The sound of her soft cry nearly broke me, but I couldn't back down. Tommy wrapped an arm around his sister. Mom, why is Grandma sad? He asked. She's not sad, honey, Astrid said, voice tight. She's just confused. I'm not confused, I said again. I'm angry. There's a difference. Marcus appeared at the table as if he'd been waiting nearby. Everything okay here? It's fine, Astrid said, though her voice shook. Mom's just having one of her episodes. I am not having an episode, I said loudly enough for half the cafe to hear. I am having a conversation with my daughter about why she left me in a nursing home and only returned when she heard about money. Marcus slid into the booth beside Astrid. Look, Bernice, everyone's emotions are running high. Maybe we should step back. Maybe you should step back, I replied. This is between my daughter and me. Actually, he said, his tone sharpening, it's between all of us. Like it or not, we'll be the ones dealing with the consequences if you make bad decisions with this money. Who will care for you if you burn through $8 million? Who will be responsible when you're 90 and broke? The warning in his reasonable voice was unmistakable. Take their deal or be abandoned completely. Astrid dabbed at her eyes. And what would you even do with a ranch in Montana? You can't live alone. You can't drive long distances. You don't know a thing about cattle or property management. Be practical, Mom. I looked around the table, at Marcus, who saw me as a burden to manage, at Astrid, who equated control with love, at my grandchildren, absorbing the lesson that affection came with conditions. You're right, I said at last. Astrid's shoulders relaxed. I'm so glad you're being reasonable, but I can learn. Her smile froze. I can hire experts, read books, take classes. I raised a child while working full-time and running a household for 30 years. I can figure out a ranch. And if I can't, I can sell it. Buy a house somewhere warm, travel, or give the money to charity. It's my choice. Marcus leaned forward. And what about us? What about Tommy and Sarah's college funds? Helping your family? What about the $20,000 that vanished from my account? What about 3 years of silence? What about treating me like a person instead of a problem? Astrid's voice turned cold. Fine. If that's how you feel, make your decisions alone, but don't expect us to be there when everything falls apart. She stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. Come on, kids. We're leaving. Tommy and Sarah scrambled from the booth, confused and frightened. Sarah turned back, eyes shimmering. Are you mad at us, Grandma? My heart ached. No, sweetheart. I'm not mad at you. I love you very much. Then why can't you just do what Mommy wants? I knelt despite the ache in my knees. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices, even when others don't understand. But I will always love you, no matter what. I hugged them both, breathing in the scent of bubblegum and sunshine. When I looked up, Astrid was watching, silent tears running down her cheeks. This isn't over, Mom, she whispered. We won't let you destroy yourself, Astrid said as she turned to leave. Tommy paused, his young face suddenly serious. Bye, Grandma, he whispered. I sat alone in the quiet cafe long after they were gone, my tea cold, my hands trembling. I'd just drawn a line in the sand with my own family, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to stand behind it. The next morning I returned to the conference room for my second meeting with Mr. Mills. This time I was ready. All night I'd replayed George's letter, every word of encouragement echoing in my mind. I thought about the woman I'd once been, before fear and loneliness convinced me to settle for less. Mr. Mills was waiting with several boxes stacked neatly beside him. He stood when I entered, his expression more somber than before. Mrs. Walsh, Bush, he began. I hope you don't mind. Your brother asked me to give you some additional materials at a very specific time. What kind of materials? I asked. He reached for a manila envelope sealed with deep red wax, George's initials pressed into the surface. He said to deliver this only if your family tried to pressure you about the inheritance. My stomach dropped. How could George have known? Your brother was perceptive, Mr. Mills said quietly. He told me about your situation. He suspected that news of his estate might draw attention. I broke the wax seal with shaking hands. Inside was another letter, this one written in a sharper, almost urgent hand. Bernice, if you're reading this, I was right. They came after the money, didn't they? Probably within hours. I need to tell you what I should have told you years ago. Things about Astrid that made me lose respect for her completely. Remember when Dad's house sold? The price was $185,000. You only received $85,000. Astrid claimed repairs and taxes ate the rest. That was a lie. I saw the closing documents. She added her name to the deed 2 weeks before Dad died, when he was too sick to understand what he was signing. She took the extra $100,000 that should have been yours. And when you broke your hip 3 years ago? While you slept, Marcus went through all your financial papers and copied everything. Bank statements, insurance, even your will. Mrs. Henderson next door witnessed it and told her daughter, who told me. Finally, about the $20,000 missing from your account, I hired a private investigator. Marcus forged your signature on a withdrawal slip. There's bank footage of him at the teller window. I've included every document, copies of the deed, the withdrawal records, the security images. You'll also find a recording of Astrid calling Sunset Manor 2 months before your surgery, asking about their memory care unit and claiming you were paranoid and forgetting to pay bills. Don't let her steal this inheritance, too. You deserve better. George, the letter slipped from my fingers. Mr. Mills watched me carefully but said nothing. Instead, he opened a thick folder filled with evidence. The altered deed bearing Astrid's name, the bank records, security photos of Marcus at the teller window, my own signature beside his forgery. Finally, he lifted a small digital recorder. Your brother asked me to play this for you. He pressed a button, and Astrid's voice filled the room. Clear, calm, unmistakable. I'm calling to ask about your memory care facility. My mother is showing signs of dementia. Confusion about finances, forgetting to pay bills, leaving appliances on, and she's becoming increasingly paranoid, accusing family members of stealing. Each word cut deeper than the last. George had known. He'd seen through everything, long before I dared to. And now I had proof. My breath caught. Even 3 years later, hearing Astrid describe me that way felt like a physical blow. Has she been evaluated by a physician? The admissions director asked. We're working on that, Astrid replied smoothly. But she resists admitting there's a problem. We may need to move quickly when the time comes. They spoke of me as if I were already gone. The fall, she mentioned. I'd tripped on a rug and earned a few bruises. Nothing more. But to Astrid, it was proof of decline. The recording ended. I was shaking. She planned it, I whispered. Mr. Mills nodded. Your brother suspected as much. That's why he made sure you had evidence before anyone could pressure you. Why? My voice cracked. Why would she do this? From what your brother discovered, he said gently, she saw you as a financial burden. With you in assisted care, she didn't have to worry about supporting you, and she had access to your finances. I finished the thought myself, nausea rising. She and Marcus were in trouble, weren't they? Yes. Around the time you entered Sunset Manor, Marcus had lost his job. They were behind on their mortgage and maxed out on credit cards. The expensive clothes, the new car, the European vacation they flaunted online. All of it, paid for with money stolen from me. What can I do? I asked. Mr. Mills opened another folder. Your brother anticipated that question too. He prepared everything for legal action if you choose. The evidence is airtight. Fraud, forgery, financial exploitation. The district attorney will be interested. And if I don't press charges, that's your decision. But what they did isn't just wrong. It's criminal. And your brother believed Marcus's father was another victim. When the man died, an estate worth about $150,000 had somehow dwindled to less than $10,000. Marcus claimed medical costs. We both know better. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. How many people had they hurt? Mr. Mills's voice softened. There's one more thing. Your brother structured the inheritance with ironclad protections. Even if you wanted to give Astrid access, you legally can't. The trust can only be used for your direct benefit. A spark of hope flared. George had thought of everything. He'd even protected me from myself. I gathered the documents, proof that I was not the confused old woman Astrid had described. For the first time in years, I felt power. Real power. 3 days later, Astrid finally called. I had already scheduled a trip to the ranch, met with the financial advisor Mr. Mills recommended, and, most importantly, made peace with what I had to do. When her name appeared on my phone, I let it ring 4 times before answering. Mom, she said, her voice strained, we need to talk. Hello, Astrid. I've been thinking about the cafe. We both said things we didn't mean. I know you're upset, but family is family. We need to work this out. I watched the familiar gray parking lot outside my window. What did you have in mind? Marcus and we talked to a lawyer. We think the best solution is to set up a family trust, Astrid said carefully. All 3 of us, as trustees. That way everyone has a say, and there's protection against impulsive decisions. By impulsive decisions, I asked, you mean me actually using my own inheritance? Mom, please don't be like that. This is about protecting you, protecting all of us. Where have you been for the last 3 days, Astrid? She hesitated. What do you mean? If this inheritance is such a crisis that needs emergency lawyers and family meetings, why didn't you call sooner? We needed time to research options, to figure out the best approach. You needed time to figure out how to control the money. Silence stretched. When she finally spoke again, her voice had hardened. Fine. You want honesty? Yes, we're worried you'll make choices that hurt everyone. You haven't exactly shown great judgment in the past. What past decisions are you talking about? You let Dad walk all over you for 20 years. You stayed in a job that barely paid the bills. You trusted people who took advantage of you. And look where it got you. Alone in a nursing home. Each word was meant to cut, to make me doubt myself. The old Bernice might have crumbled. But the old Bernice hadn't read George's letters. You're right, I said calmly. I did trust people who took advantage of me. But I've learned from those mistakes. Good, she said, relief flickering. So you'll consider the family trust? Actually, I said, I've decided to accept your suggestion from the cafe. What suggestion? That I make my decisions alone. Another long silence. What does that mean? It means I'm declining your offer to manage my inheritance. It means I'm making my own choices, and it means it's time you and Marcus face the consequences of your choices. What are you talking about? I rested my hand on George's thick folder. I'm talking about the $100,000 you stole from Dad's estate. I'm talking about the $20,000 Marcus forged my name to take from my bank account. I'm talking about 3 years of telling everyone I was incompetent. The line went dead quiet. I don't know what lies Uncle George told you. George didn't tell me anything. He showed me. Bank records, security footage, recorded phone calls. That's impossible. Would you like me to play the recording of you calling Sunset Manor 2 months before my hip surgery? The one where you describe my dementia symptoms and ask about emergency placement? A sharp intake of breath. Mom, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very good at explanations that make me look confused, and you look caring. But I'm done listening. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. George hired a private investigator. Everything is documented, photographed, recorded. The district attorney would be very interested in a case involving elder fraud. You wouldn't... Her voice wavered. Wouldn't I? You've spent 3 years telling everyone I'm not competent to make decisions. But apparently, I'm competent enough to press charges. Her breathing quickened. Mom, please, think about Tommy and Sarah. Think about what this would do to them. And there it is, I said softly, using my grandchildren as shields, just like you used them as bait at the cafe. I have thought about them, Astrid. I've thought about the lesson you're teaching, that it's fine to steal from family, fine to abandon your mother, fine to make love conditional on money. Well, that's not what we're teaching, isn't it? Tommy is 11 and has never spent a single night at his grandmother's house. Sarah is 8 and has visited me 6 times in 3 years. What exactly are you teaching them about family? We were protecting them from seeing you like this. Like what? Independent? Standing up for myself? Heaven forbid they see their grandmother act like she has value. You're twisting everything. No, I'm finally seeing clearly. Fine, she snapped, her voice cracking. You want to cut us out? Go ahead, but don't expect us to pick up the pieces when you lose everything. I won't need you to, I said evenly. Because unlike you, I'm not planning to steal from family to solve my problems. You know what? You deserve to be alone. You've always been selfish. Maybe being abandoned is exactly what you earned. The cruelty should have crushed me. A week ago it might have. Now armed with the truth, it just sounded small. Maybe you're right, I said quietly. Maybe I do deserve to be alone. But if that's true, what do you deserve for stealing from me? For lying about me? For abandoning me? She hung up. 2 hours later, the phone rang again. Marcus. Bernice, we need to talk. Astrid is hysterical. This is getting out of hand. Hello, Marcus. How are you enjoying the truck you bought with my $20,000? Silence. Then a strained reply. I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said, my voice like stone. I have security footage of you at the bank forging my signature, I told Marcus, my voice steady. Copies of the withdrawal slips. Everything. Look, he said, forcing a laugh. If there were some financial irregularities, I'm sure we can work it out. But threatening to involve law enforcement? That's going too far, is it? You committed a felony, Marcus. Exploiting an elderly person is a serious crime. You're talking about destroying our family over accounting errors. I'm talking about justice for 3 years of abuse. His tone hardened. You think this inheritance makes you powerful? You're still just a confused old woman in a nursing home. You still need us. Who's going to drive you to doctor appointments? Handle your medications? Be there when you fall and break a hip? The same people who've cared for me the past 3 years, I replied. Paid professionals who actually care about my well-being. And when the money runs out? When you're 90 and broke because you made stupid decisions? Then what? Then I'll deal with it, just as I've dealt with everything else. You really want to die alone? The words pierced me because they touched my oldest fear. But then I remembered the truth. I had already felt alone, even with Astrid and Marcus in my life. Marcus, I said quietly, I've been alone for 3 years. The only difference now is that I'm choosing it. I hung up. Immediately, I called Mr. Mills. I want to see the ranch tomorrow, I told him, and I want to start the paperwork to move there. Are you sure, Mrs. Walsh? This is a big decision. I'm sure, I said. For the first time in years, I'm absolutely sure. That night, I sat at my small desk and wrote 2 letters. The first, to Tommy and Sarah, explained that Grandma might not see them for a while, but that I loved them and hoped they'd understand when they were older. The second, to Mr. Mills, outlined every step to take if Astrid or Marcus tried to claim I was incompetent or sought guardianship. Then I turned on the recorder he had given me and spent an hour documenting everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every time they treated me as a burden instead of a person. If they ever questioned my competence, I'd have proof of exactly how clear my mind was. Morning came. I packed my life into 2 suitcases, some clothes, a few books, cherished photographs, and George's letters folded carefully between sweaters. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a deep, steady sense of control. Astrid and Marcus had believed they could intimidate me, that I was weak, confused, desperate for their approval. They were about to learn the difference between being alone and being free. The drive to Montana took 6 hours, but it felt like crossing into another world. Mr. Mills had arranged a car service. As we left the flat prairie behind and entered rolling hills dotted with cattle, anticipation bubbled through me like a long, forgotten melody. The ranch was even more beautiful than the photographs. The log house sat on a gentle rise overlooking a wide valley where a silver creek wound through cottonwood trees. Snow-capped mountains shimmered in the distance. I realized I was crying, but they were not tears of sadness. For the first time in 3 years, I was looking at a place that felt like home. "Everything okay, Mrs. Walsh?" the driver asked. "Everything's perfect, I said. Tom and Linda Garrett, the couple George had hired to maintain the property, greeted me with warm smiles and weathered hands. "George talked about you all the time," Linda said as she guided me through the house. "He was so proud of you, and worried too. He said you deserve better than what life had given you." The house itself was simple and welcoming. 4 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, sunlight spilling through wide windows onto sturdy handmade furniture, and shelves of ranch guides and classic novels. "The cattle operation pretty much runs itself," Tom explained as we walked through the barns. "George built it up slow and steady, about 200 head of Angus. Good grazing land, plenty of water. The income covers expenses and then some." "You mean it actually makes money?" I asked. Tom grinned. "George was a smart businessman. This place has turned a profit every year since 1995. I stood in the doorway of the main barn, breathing in the scent of hay and leather, listening to the soft lowing of the cattle. The air was so still I could hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, I felt it. Peace, possibility, and a life that was wholly, finally, mine. This rewrite keeps the stakes high and the imagery vivid, ideal for a dramatic YouTube storytelling video that draws listeners all the way to the final word. Here's a polished, dramatic rewrite of this chapter. Paced for narration, clear and emotionally gripping. Perfect for a YouTube storytelling video. "I have security footage of you at the bank forging my signature," I told Marcus, my voice steady. "Copies of the withdrawal slips. Everything. Look," he said quickly. "If there were financial irregularities, I'm sure we can work it out. But threatening to involve law enforcement? That's too far." "Is it?" "You committed a crime, Marcus. What you did was more than wrong. It was illegal. You're going to destroy our family over accounting errors? I'm talking about justice for 3 years of abuse." His tone hardened. "You think this inheritance makes you powerful? You're still a confused old woman in a nursing home. You still need us. Who's going to drive you to doctor appointments, handle your medications, be there when you fall and break a hip?" "The same people who've been doing it for the last 3 years, I said firmly. "Professionals who actually care about me. And when the money runs out? When you're 90 and broke because of stupid decisions? Then what? Then I'll deal with it. Just like I've dealt with everything else. You really want to die alone?" The words cut deep because they touched my oldest fear. But then I thought about the last 3 years. The loneliness, the silence, the absence of love. I had already been alone. "Marcus," I said quietly, "I've been alone for 3 years. The only difference now is that I'm choosing it." I hung up. Immediately I called Mr. Mills. "I want to see the ranch tomorrow," I told him, "and start the paperwork to move there." "Are you sure, Mrs. Walsh?" "It's a big decision." "I'm sure. For the first time in years, I'm absolutely sure." That night I sat down and wrote 2 letters. One for Tommy and Sarah, explaining why Grandma might not see them for a while, but that I loved them and hoped they'd understand one day. The other to Mr. Mills gave instructions if Astrid or Marcus tried to challenge my competence or seek guardianship. Then I picked up the recorder and spoke for over an hour, detailing every lie, every manipulation, every time they had made me feel like a burden. If they wanted to question my mind, I'd give them proof of just how sharp I really was. The next morning, I packed my life into 2 suitcases, clothes, books, photographs, and George's letters folded carefully between sweaters. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt in control. Astrid and Marcus had believed they could intimidate me into giving them what they wanted. They thought I was weak, confused, desperate for approval. They were about to learn the difference between being alone and being free. The 6-hour drive to Montana felt like crossing into another world. As the car wound through rolling hills dotted with cattle, anticipation filled me, something I hadn't felt in years. The ranch was even more beautiful than the photographs. A log house stood on a gentle rise overlooking a valley where a silver creek wound through cottonwoods. Snow-capped mountains shimmered in the distance. I realized I was crying, but not from sadness. For the first time in 3 years, I was looking at a place that could truly be home. Tom and Linda Garrett, the couple George had entrusted with the ranch, greeted me like family. "George talked about you all the time," Linda said warmly. "He was so proud of you, but worried too. He said you deserved better than what life had given you." The house was solid and welcoming, with 4 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, and shelves filled with George's books. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, filling the rooms with golden light. "The cattle operation pretty much runs itself," Tom explained as we walked the barns. 200 head of Angus, good grazing, reliable water. The income covers expenses and then some. "You mean it makes money?" I asked, amazed. Tom grinned. "George was smart." This place has turned a profit every year since 1995. I stood in the doorway of the main barn, breathing in hay and leather, listening to the quiet lowing of cattle. The silence was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat, and for the first time in years I felt it, peace, possibility, and a life that was truly mine. Linda once told me, the difference between loneliness and solitude is choice. A month later, I understood exactly what she meant. A small package arrived with no return address. Inside was a new school photo of Tommy and a crayon drawing from Sarah, a house surrounded by flowers. On the back, in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "I love you, Grandma." I placed the photo on the mantle and the drawing on the refrigerator, right beside the grocery list Linda helped me write and the appointment cards from Dr. Chen. 2 months passed. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the phone rang. "Grandma Bernice, it's Tommy." His voice was steady but nervous. "Mom doesn't know I'm calling." My heart nearly stopped. "Tommy, how did you get this number?" "I found it in Mom's phone." "Grandma, are you really living on a ranch with horses?" I laughed, glancing out at the window where Tom was working cattle. "No horses, but plenty of cows and chickens, and the most beautiful mountains you've ever seen. Could Sarah and I visit sometime when we're older?" "Oh, sweetheart, you can visit anytime your mother says it's okay. She says you don't want to see us anymore." The lie struck like a punch. "That's not true, Tommy. I will always want to see you. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that make things complicated. Is it because Mom did something bad? Such a smart boy. It's because I finally learned to stand up for myself." "Good," he said fiercely. "You should stand up for yourself." After we hung up, I called Mr. Mills. "I want to set up college funds for Tommy and Sarah," I said. "Funds their mother can't touch. They'll get them when they turn 18. "That's very generous, Mrs. Walsh." "It isn't generosity," I replied. "It's an investment in their future. One day they'll ask what happened to our family. When they do, I want them to know their grandmother never stopped loving them." 6 months later, I was scattering feed for the chickens when a familiar car turned up the ranch road. My instinct was to hide, but I stayed where I was. Astrid stepped out slowly, taking in the ranch with a look that was half wonder, half weariness. She'd lost weight. New lines framed her eyes. "Hello, Mom." "Hello, Astrid." We studied each other across the farmyard. 2 women who had hurt each other in ways that might never fully heal. "The kids miss you," she said quietly. "I miss them too. Tommy keeps asking when he can visit. Sarah draws pictures of you all the time." I waited. I wasn't going to make it easy. I came to apologize," she said at last. "Really apologize. Not to make things go back to the way they were. And to tell you, Marcus and I are getting divorced. When he found out you wouldn't give us access to the inheritance, he showed his true colors. I wasn't the only person he was stealing from." I felt a flicker of sympathy, but no surprise. I'm sorry you're in pain. I'm sorry the kids are going through a divorce. I'm not sorry you're learning who Marcus really is. Astrid nodded, tears starting to fall. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but could we start over? Not the old way, something new. I looked at my daughter and for the first time in years saw humility, real remorse, the beginning of change. That depends, I said. On what? On whether you're here because you truly want a relationship with me or because you still want something from me. I want my mother back, she whispered. I want the kids to know their grandmother. I want to stop being the person who abandoned you. It wasn't a magic fix. It didn't erase the past. But it was a beginning. Would you like to come in for coffee? I asked. We walked toward the house together. In the window's reflection, I caught sight of myself, straight-backed, sun-warmed, confident. Work boots, jeans that fit, hair tied back. A woman who knew her own worth. George had been right. I did deserve better than what I'd accepted. And now I finally demanded it. The ranch stretched around us, mine in every sense. The mountains stood watch, strong and unchanging. For the first time in 67 years, I was exactly where I belonged. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Have you faced anything similar? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you'd like more stories like this, check out the 2 videos now on your screen. They are some of the channel's favorites, and each one has a twist you won't see coming.